Are you a tech executive? It's time that you learn how to plate things correctly. Plating is not only a crucial skill for chefs at restaurants, but also for anyone that wants to have a good and healthy relationship with stakeholders, and especially the CEO in a startup or a tech company. In this video, we're going to talk about your plating habits, how you can become better in a way that will actually make you a much more effective leader, and most likely will have your CEO like seeing you a bit more as opposed to dreading seeing your face walk up to them in the hall. By the way, if you're new here, hi, I'm Aviv Ben-Yosef. I'm a tech executive, coach, and consultant. I help people just like you create teams worth leading because life's too short to lead mediocre teams. And before getting to our subject today, quickly, I want to say that if you have been following me, we recently moved to Rome. I realized, hey, I like being in Rome. Lots of people would like to be in Rome. Why not use the location to have some special events going on face-to-face with my clients, be it one-on-ones, workshops, strategy retreats, that sort of stuff. So I'm thinking where I should be putting my efforts in the next few months. I would really appreciate it if you took the 30 seconds it would take you to fill up the one question survey in the link in this video description to help me find out what my audience really would rather have me do first. So please do that. It would mean a lot to me. Now let's talk a bit about plating. Plating is, the concept of how do we present a plate. A lot of people in tech have this habit of being problem dumpers. You go into a room, you go to a conference, you go to a meeting, and what do? You start spewing up a bunch of issues. Like, if there's a plate at a restaurant, you're essentially barfing a bunch of problems onto it, piling on more and more and more things. Like, oh yeah, there's an issue with that, and SOC 2 is not going to be working, and we have a problem with the cloud provider, and that engineer wants to quit, and that manager is not good enough, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. You just pile it all on. Why? Because we're used to talking about all the issues. It's a bit like a pull request. You open it up and you comment about everything that you think needs to be addressed. So we do the same here. The problem with that is that essentially you're just overwhelming everyone. Not only did you not help us in any way, you're making us feel like things are worse. Now, I know what you're thinking. Am I not supposed to speak up? Say when I see an issue? Of course you are. But when we're speaking up about issues that are within our own purview and we don't say what needs to be done, we're not helping all that much. Okay, so at least people will see that you're conscious of problems. But if you're, I don't want a doctor that comes up to me and says, you have an issue with your cholesterol, with this, with that, with that, and doesn't tell me, what I should be doing. Am I supposed to ask, what do I do, doctor? Or maybe you should be performing these tests. I don't know. That's not my job, right? The same goes with you. If there are issues that are not within your purview, then, if you see that there might be an issue when it comes to how sales are doing things, how marketing is connecting to stuff, whatever, fine. You can maybe just point at that and say, what's going on there. But a lot of times, especially when we're talking about things that you can have some control over, try to be in a position of being active, being proactive. You're saying what you want to do. Don't just spew all your problems on my plate. That's not a plate I would like to eat from, right? I would much rather have you help me take things off my plate. You've heard that. Every leader would prefer working with people who take things off their plates. How do you do that? First of all, avoid the problem dumping. Second, another thing that you have to keep in mind is how you form the plating. A lot of past engineers I work with have this problem that we think the trade-offs are amazing. Like they're the silver bullet. And well, I agree. You should almost always be speaking in trade-offs, not 0-1, but speak about everything that's, the gradient in between, because life is not just digital. When you realize that, that's extremely helpful. However, when we use it too much or in a way that's not really effective, we might not realize that we're actually doing more harm. Why? Because I see people, first of all, using these trade-offs as in every time there's an issue, we come in with a bunch of problems or a bunch of options about how to do things. You can do it like this, you can do it like that. There you get this, there you get that. And you start listing everything. The problem is that we are overwhelming people with options. There are just way too many things to make a selection, and people get tired just listening to that. So even if you're thinking that you're being helpful, giving them the options to take things off their plate, you're giving them way more information and way more choice than they actually want. If we're talking about things that are within your responsibility, within your expertise, that you're not helping me. If I'm coming to a place and I just want a burger, and what you're giving me is this 20-dish tasting menu, and I need to choose the wine flight that's going to be accommodating that, where I didn't want that. I just asked for a burger. I just asked for a meal and to be done with it because I've got a meeting to get to. Then you're not really helping me. You're overwhelming me. The same happens when we're using these trade-offs, even without realizing that we might be becoming passive aggressive. We're saying, sure, you have all of these options, do whatever you want, but you're overwhelming me with so many options that many people feel, even if that's not your intention, many people end up going out of those meetings feeling like you were twisting their arm to choose whatever you wanted because you overwhelmed them with a bunch of options and they didn't really know what to do. Instead, if we're talking about the plating, don't put all of those things on my plate and don't even know what I'm going to be starting with. Instead, be a lot more proactive. You're the expert. You should have an opinion. So it's fine to say that there's a trade-off. It's fine to mention a few of the options, but accompany that with your default, your suggestion. When a waiter comes to you and tells you, we have this and that, I really recommend today's special. It's a really nice one if you like blah. That's good, right? That's the sort of guidance that you really value. You need to be doing the same. So if there's an issue, there are a few options. You can mention the options. You don't even have to. You can then say, I believe doing this is the right thing to do. And by giving the CEO, giving the board, whatever, that default, you're really helping them move forward and you're actually using your expertise. You're not saying that's the only way forward. You're not saying, I don't think that there's any other option. Whatever you're saying here, there are a few options, A, B, and C. I really lean more towards B, and that's it. If they're gonna ask, why, or what's the difference, or I would appreciate C, and maybe you come up with something that's between B and C, that's fine. But start by giving a default. That's really plating things. The nice little gourmet dishes that you get on a nice plate, you just get that, right? It's very clear what you're supposed to do. It's one bite, you know exactly what you're gonna be doing, yummy, move on. That's the sort of decisions that a lot of people would much rather do because we're also overwhelmed. So if you plate it correctly and you give me just that single bite, you've already created a much better experience for me. And lastly, I want you to think about the fact that sometimes there's no need of no plate whatsoever. I'm not speaking about, finger food. I'm speaking about realizing that sometimes you don't even need to come and put things on my plate. Not even with a suggestion. You can come later and tell me, hey, we had this, that. I started working on that. Or I told X to do this and that. You're actually coming and telling me later what you did. Of course, you have to learn the boundaries, but a lot of times you have way more freedom than you realize. And if you use it, you'll be asking more for forgiveness than for permission. You'll be way more proactive. And again, a lot of the times, assuming that your instincts are correct, you're going to be making the right decisions. So as long as we're not talking about anything that's too critical and you see that you're in sync with the board or with the CEO or whatever, start making decisions and move towards just let them know, after doing that, we did this, we did that. I don't need the plate if it's not even something that I'm going to be eating myself. Okay, I don't need to see what you're taking out over there. If someone asks for a meal, you can just tell me, oh yeah, here's the bill they paid. That's fine, right? I'm okay with that. The last thing that you need to be considering is where you are in your plating in an ability to take things off someone's plate. You see the waiter going out with the plate and you spot that there's something there that you can take off. Oh yeah, the CEO really doesn't like eggplant. Let me take that. And that's where you can do that. That's like the upper echelon of leadership, where you're actually proactively helping others by making their lives better, not just, not dumping more things at them, but you're noticing opportunities where you and your organization can be even more helpful and help them by taking things off their plate, problems they already have and they're aware of it, and you're preventing it. If we're talking about, you notice that, the current onboarding across the different departments doesn't make sense because people don't learn what others are doing, you can complain about it. That's the problem dumping we talked about. Or you can say, I think that there's an issue, the CEO is already aware of it, and I want to talk to this, and that, and come up with a few changes. Fine, okay, good. I was just gonna have to deal with this headache, but you're telling me you want to take that? Awesome. When you take that proactive step, you're gonna be helping the CEO. When they see your face in the hall, it's like, oh my God, what do they want this time? It's, oh my God, what are they gonna tell me now? Can they help me now? Maybe they're gonna tell me they just did this, they did that, they helped me with this. Maybe they're gonna see what's on my plate right now and take that piece of carrot I'm not really into. Whatever it is, I'm eager to see them. Please knock on my door. That's the sort of scenario that you want to create. Will it always be like that? Of course not. Will you sometimes be the bearer of bad news? Of course you're gonna be. That's the way life is. But the main question is, what's the default stance when people see you? Do they immediately cower? Do they immediately, try to hide themselves because they know you're gonna be dumping problems on them? Or do they see you and they think, hey, Aviv, what's up? That's what you want to be doing. That's plating for leaders. Create that plate that's going to make them, whet their appetites, see it, and they want to stop you as you're walking down the hall to maybe take something. Nibble a bit on that. That's it for this video. If you have any questions or comments, please, as always, let me know in the comments, and like and subscribe if you enjoyed this because it really helps. And lastly, again, I would really appreciate it if you'd answer the single question survey, link in the video description, and maybe I'll see you in person in Rome soon. That's it. Ciao.